Hey YouTube, it's Robert Hall and I'm starting a new series called Lighting on Location. Now I did something similar in the past called the BTS Journal where I went over like 6 or 7 shots and explained how I lit them. But in this series I want to dive a little bit deeper into per sessions. I've been recording a lot more in-depth behind the scenes using a 360 camera, which just allows me to get a lot more video of my lighting setups as well as my approach. So in this I want to focus on one session and I want to kind of go through what we were thinking, how we got to our final destination with the images, as well as talk more about the purpose of the image. Because it's one thing if your photos just look nice, but in my world where you're actually selling the service of photography to some type of business, that means that your photos have to fit a certain purpose. Whether that's selling a story, selling a product, general marketing use, we're going to talk more about the use case of these photos, that way you can understand some of the creative decisions made. Alright, so let's jump into the session. So in today's video we are covering a story. This is an editorial shoot and we're covering a student who works stressing materials in a lab in the engineering school. Now the purpose of this shoot is to have a single file, one image that can be used as a 2-page spread. Now we take a lot of other shots and those don't just go nowhere. A lot of times they're used for general purpose or revisited later for other marketing purposes, but the immediate goal of the purpose and the client is all about having a 2-page spread for one book. So we started off with some portraits at the countertop. I would call this a safe shot. It's a very simple 2-light setup. One light overhead and another light as a rear light separating him from a semi-dark background. Having a semi-dark background is extremely important at the university simply because we're often putting a lot of copy over these images, so we need something that could naturally have either a black or a white gradient put over it. That way the text is easy to read. Lighting here is simple. We've got a large light source very close to him overhead because I need the light to stay out of frame on either side, so that's why we're going overhead. I'm being very careful to keep it feathered in front of him, that way we're not giving him raccoon eyes, we're still seeing a lot of light in his eyes. And then we've just got a light firing at his back shoulder to separate him from the background. Now I started with a very wide aperture version that just shifts your focus straight to the subject. You can't really see any of the details on the table, but then I also gave a version with a higher f-stop, so a more narrow aperture and therefore greater depth of field. That way you can see all the details of the products on the table. I kind of messed with the rear light position and let it leak through in a few shots as well. Now if you'll notice, most of the images the subject is pushed far to the right, and the whole purpose of that is because this is a 2-page spread, I can't have his face fall anywhere near that gutter of this book. So whether it's stapled or has a perfect binding, the middle of this image is going to get sucked in. So ideally the entire subject, including his arm, his entire body, is on one side of the frame, which we can adjust a little bit with cropping. Okay, so then we got more to talking about what he would actually be doing here. What is the purpose of the place that he's at? And this is actually a place where you can heat and cool metals to stress test them, and he kind of explained that when you cool them off there's a lot of steam. We didn't have the time or the safety supervision necessary to actually go through with this and show that exact thing, but we did start thinking, ooh, I think we kind of need the steam in this shot. I asked John Paul if he would run back to the marketing area, that way he could grab the atmosphere aerosol, which is just convenient portable steam that you can use anywhere. So he agreed, he took off to go get that, and I started working on a little bit different of a concept so we could come back to the original. So I had the student step over to this other piece of equipment, which I'm just going to call the oven because I don't know what the actual technical term is, if there even is a technical term, but it's basically a super microwave that heats metals. So I instantly knew that I wanted to put a light inside the oven, that way a majority of the light was coming from inside the oven, because I was thinking if we had some molten hot metal, then it's going to emit quite the glow, and I wanted that to be the key light source of the image, a single AD200 stuffed in that microwave. But to me the white light didn't really sell it. Obviously it looks like a light source coming from there, but it doesn't have the color property that I'm looking for. And you might be thinking, oh, you can just push the white balance up, but I tried that and it takes on more of a yellow characteristic rather than the orange glow that I was really looking for. Now this is a rare circumstance where I actually didn't have gels on me. I don't know, for whatever reason when I changed cases I just didn't have them on my more portable grab and go shooting bag. So we started looking around the room for anything orange and thankfully found these orange plastic pieces all in a bag. And so I just stuffed them in the corner and fired the flash directly into it, which completely changed the look. Now we've got that orange glow that I'm looking for rather than than just warming the image up. So again, lighting setup here, 8200 fired into some orange plastic to give an orange glow on our subject, and a little bit of fill light. Now without the color, I also like how these work in black and white. Another little detail here is we were just faking this, right? There's nothing hot there. We still want to make sure that we are presenting the action authentically. So we had to make sure he had gloves on, we had to make sure that he had safety goggles on, as if he was actually completing the process of heating some type of material. Because otherwise, people who see this, who are actually familiar with the department, familiar with the equipment, are going to see this and go, what the heck, why wouldn't he be using this? So whenever you're using specialized equipment, ask the questions, what would you be wearing right here? What type of safety equipment would you be using? Is this the genuine way that you would interact with this equipment? So by the time we finished with this, John Paul had returned with the atmosphere aerosol. So we went back to our original station and our original setup. Now to get gas, vapor, smoke, anything like that to be visible, the idea is pretty simple. You need light hitting it, and you need the light hitting it to make it brighter than whatever the heck is behind it. So ideally, you want a dark background so that the light colored smoke stands out. Now in this scenario, the smoke that is going to be billowing out of one of these containers is really close to our subject. So we have to be really careful with how we approach lighting it, because otherwise the light is also going to affect our subject, not something we want. So the best way that I would explain this is we're trying to light specific zones. We're trying to keep a majority of the frame dark while still lighting our subject so he pops out, as well as lighting the smoke in front of him. We want that to pop out. So I kept my lights extremely close to what they were lighting. That way they would fall off quickly, right? The closer your light source is to a subject, the faster, the more rapidly that it's going to fall off to a darker luminance. So in this image, you can see most of the frame is bright, and that's because I tried lighting that smoke from the backside, which just brightens up the background, brightens up his other arm, shows his whole body. But with the simple switch of moving the backlight closer to the smoke, as close as I could possibly get it to the smoke, now the whole background gets dark, his other arm isn't affected because it's so much closer to the smoke that it needs to light that it falls off on everything else. So we would count 1, 2, 3, John Paul would spray a little bit of atmosphere aerosol in that pan, and then he would instantly kind of hide behind the table. 3, 2, 1, go. That way I didn't see him in the image, and then I would click away, get a few shots with the vapor, and then we would try again. And we simply tried getting a few different physical actions while getting the smoke, and you can see that by having this gridded light source with the 8200 just off to the side, that it really does a great job of carving out that smoke, which I added a little bit of the effect by using clarity in Photoshop as well as boosting the contrast. Now for most of the images, again, we've got a really natural color palette where the vapor is actually white, just so it just looks like smoke. But I also did a few more colored alternatives using split toning, and actually those are my favorite ones. Now to give myself a little bit of critique here, the one thing I kind of lost sight of once I started worrying about capturing the smoke and John Paul dipping behind, when was he out of the shot, the one thing that I kind of let loose on here is the composition a bit. I did not completely free that gutter. His head is dangerously close to the middle of the frame, so we're gonna have to crop this shot in post in order for it to work. All right, so that's video 1 of lighting on location. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you guys learned something from this series. I think I've got like 15 of these type of short editorial shoots at the university that I can share with you guys. So if you like this series, please hit that like button so I know to make more of them. Subscribe if you want to see more, and until next time, keep on shooting.